Hi everyone, really great to be here with you today or tonight for most of you I would imagine. My name's Monique Bathis and I'm here to talk to you this evening about how music can help with your child's development. So I am a mum of one. I've got a 5-year-old boy. I live in Queensland, Australia, in a small little community near the ocean, which is amazing and I love it. I am a registered music therapist and I have been practicing as a music therapist for coming up to 10 years now, which is crazy to think. I have worked across many different areas, but within that time mostly with young children and in paediatrics. So I have had a private practice and currently have a private practice where I work with lots of children and young people who have various disabilities such as autism, and also work within an acute paediatric hospital here. So that occupies a lot of my time as well as being a mum. And within my work at the hospital, I've worked across lots of different areas of the hospital, including complex infant care, within the cardiac ward, rehabilitation, so with children who have brain injuries or spinal cord injuries, intensive care, where else? Lots of different areas, and I've been doing that work for about 7 or 8 years now, so a lot of my time working as a music therapist has been spent working in a children's hospital, which I absolutely love. More recently though, I have been developing an online course that's called From Chaos to Harmony, and this is a 4-week program that will teach parents to confidently be able to use music to navigate through their child's emotions and development, and looking particularly at brain development and how music can be used to support daily rhythms and routines, meltdowns and tantrums, sensory processing, and just overall development, and really allowing parents to effectively implement music-based strategies and concepts to support all of this. So I'm really excited and pumped to be launching this online course, which is going to be happening next month. So that's been a real passion project of mine recently. I wanted to just quickly start out by actually explaining what music therapy is, because a lot of people may not have heard of it, even though it's been around for over 50 years now. It's only probably more recently in the last decade or so that it has taken off and is becoming a bit more widely known around the world, and particularly within Australia, and I would imagine in the US as well. So music therapy is a research-based practice profession in which music is used to actively support people as they strive to improve their health, their functioning and overall well-being. We use music intentionally, and we are all university trained professionals, and we are all registered within our own country's Music Therapy Association. So in Australia it's called the Australian Music Therapy Association, and I'm pretty sure it's called the American Music Therapy Association in the US. So music therapists incorporate a range of music making methods within and through a therapeutic relationship with their clients or patients. We're employed in lots of different sectors, including health, community, aged care, disability, early childhood and private practice. And I guess just to note the difference of what music therapy is that we are using music to support people's health, well-being and functioning, whereas when you think of music education, it's teaching specific music skills, or entertainment is to obviously use music as a form of entertainment. So I'm not a music educator, I'm not a music entertainer, I use music as a therapeutic tool. As I said, we are all registered and we do draw on an extensive body of research, and we're bound by a code of ethics that informs our practice. And music therapy is actually part of the allied health profession. So if you think of physiotherapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy, music therapy falls within that bracket. And as I say, we're qualified and have studied. I've done a master's in music therapy, and I also have an undergraduate degree, which is in a Bachelor of Arts, and my 2 majors were in psychology and music. And within our studies, we study things like psychology, social theory, physiology, and how music can be used as a tool to engage patients and clients and families within therapy. So I guess today I wanted to share not necessarily music therapy specific information, but more on music and its impact on the brain and development, and give you strategies that I use within my own practice and you might like to try with your own children, including how using music for emotional support and to navigate behaviours can be really helpful within the home environment, and also share some information just at the end a little bit about my online course that's going to be launching next month. So with all that being said, let's get into the nitty-gritty. In the first few years of life, a child's brain develops more than any other time in their life, and by 5 years of age, children's brains are 90% developed. So that's pretty incredible when you think in 5 short years of their life, their brain is undergoing so much change and so much growth and development. So it's really important to keep that in the back of your mind. And early brain development has a lasting impact on a child's ability to learn and to succeed in school and in life. And it goes without saying that the quality of a child's experience in those first few years of life, whether that be positive or negative, will shape how their brain develops and as they grow. As you know, I'm sure you know, the brain is made up of 2 hemispheres, the left and the right. Music historically has often been seen as a right brain activity, so that's more the creative part of our brain, and the left hemisphere referred to as our analytical or our thinking brain, so more those logical type of things. But through medical imaging and various studies over the last probably decade to 20 years, it's been shown that music actually activates all areas of our brain simultaneously, which is pretty incredible. It's one of the only things that activates your brain simultaneously, all areas of the brain. So just to give you a bit of an example what that looks like and how that looks, listening to music not only activates the auditory cortex in both hemispheres, but also areas of the brain involved with movement and other basic body functions. When we hear music, listening also involves the memory centers in our brain, such as the hippocampus, which is part of the limbic system, and our emotion center, and also some of the lowest parts of the frontal lobe. And so this is why we also have emotional responses to certain songs and music, which I'm sure you've probably experienced in your own life. When we tap or move along to music, this gets our cerebellum involved, which is responsible for regulating motor movements. Reading music involves visual centers of our brain, and listening to or recalling lyrics will involve language centers of our brain. So there is a lot going on when we're engaging and listening and playing music. Moving on to looking at music and attachment. Music, particularly using our voice through singing, can provide a really beautiful and gentle way for parents, and particularly mothers within that newborn phase, to connect and bond with their baby, but also for fathers as well. Attuned interaction, which is the ability to read and respond to babies' cues between mother and infant, is a dynamic experience for infant learning, socialization, and psychological well-being. Vocal expressiveness is part of the mother-infant attachment, and is a real source of connection between mother and infant. And in the work I do with hospitalised babies, that vocal interaction between mum and bub is crucial, particularly when other kinds of interaction are not possible or are limited, or mum may not be at the point where she's confident to handle bub due to various lines. So often in the work I do, babies might not be able to be picked up by their mum, or they might be in intensive care, and the only way that parents are able to interact and bond with their child is through singing and through use of their voice. So it is a really powerful tool. And a big part of my role within that is to educate and empower parents on how they can use their voice as a way to meaningfully engage and interact with their bub. Not everyone's confident in doing this initially, but when parents see the impact that has, they are all for it, which is great. So how we sing to our babies is also important. Even when we talk to infants, we naturally use that sort of sing-songy voice, and when we're singing to babies, we often will raise the pitch of our voice and sing at a slower than normal tempo than what we would talk. The emotional quality of our voices also rises, and we rock or move softly, and usually we're looking at our baby and maintaining eye contact, so there's a lot going on in that interaction. And this kind of singing is called infant-directed singing, and it has several benefits. Singing to infants strengthens the bond between parent and child, as I said, and releases oxytocin, which is the chemical in our brain that helps us feel connected and bonding. It also helps to regulate bub's arousal level, and so this is the sense of awareness and attention. And by altering bub's mood, singing may help with things like feeding or sleeping, which in turn will positively impact bub's growth and development. And as I said, briefly touched on, one of the biggest barriers or resistance that I often come across, if you will, is parents saying or mum saying, "I can't sing." But the best thing for you to remember is that Your bub or your child does not care what you sound like. They prefer your voice over anyone else's, and especially in those first few months of life. So in utero, hearing actually begins in utero. Around 18 weeks, bub can start to hear external sounds, including their mother's voice, and then around 22 to 24 weeks, all those things start to become really familiar and soothing and comforting for their child. So your bub knows your voice even before they are born. Looking more at music for developmental play, for bubs and young children, really the primary job of our children is to learn, to grow and to play. And it's one of the most important things that you can do for your child to help with their development and to nurture your relationship with each other. Babies and children are intrinsically musical and generally respond positively to the sound of music. Music is predictable, it's motivating, and it's gentle. And it's fun and it's enjoyable. And it's a fun activity, and it can maximise your baby's engagement while also providing you with opportunities, as I said, to bond and connect with your child. Toddlers and preschoolers and in that sort of early childhood age love to dance, and they love to move to music and to sing. And the key to using music from a play point of view during this time and during this age is using repetition. So repetition really encourages not only language acquisition, but also memorization, and it stimulates those areas of the brain involved with those areas of development, and it's really important. I wanted to go through the main areas of development, so looking at speech and language, motor skills, cognitive skills, and social and emotional skills, and provide some examples of how you might incorporate music targeting those areas of development with your baby or child. And the great thing is with these music-based activities is that you're working on multiple areas of development at the one time, so there will be a little bit of overlap as I go through. Firstly, speech and language development is both the understanding and use of language. Music fosters language development, particularly through singing and by exploring words and rhymes within music. Singing familiar songs can help encourage early communication skills, including vocalizing, eye contact, and oral motor movements. Keep an eye out also for all the different ways your baby or your child's trying to communicate with you, such as are they moving, are they looking at you, are they cooing or babbling, are they smiling, what's their facial expression? And a really great way to use songs and music is to pause in familiar songs and do some reciprocal vocalizing, which is really just vocal turn taking. Your baby might make a sound, so it's important to make a sound back, and that's really pre-verbal communication skills. This all encourages your child to explore using their voice and provides opportunities for that pre-verbal communication. An example of how you might pause in a song to encourage your child to use their voice would be something as simple as Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. So I'm pretty sure you're all familiar with that song. You might be sick of it, but it's a great example to give. So looking at that first phrase in Twinkle Twinkle, it starts by going, twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you, and then you pause. You might have your eyebrows up, your mouth open. You might feel a bit silly, but that pausing with that before you sing that last word of the phrase, and by you having your mouth open, your bub starts to anticipate as the song becomes familiar that something's missing, and they might go ah or make a sound, and it doesn't matter what sound they make. Provide some really positive reinforcement, go yes, ah, and using those sorts of musical phrases to encourage vocalization and anticipation skills as well. And again, repetition is going to be super important as this helps your little one retain and recall information. Our brain actually chunks pieces of information together when we sing songs, and it's a really great way to help us retain and recall information a lot easier. So another example of what this might look like is when you think of the ABC song. So I don't know if it goes the same in North America than it does in Australia, but the first chunk of that song is A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So that's a chunk, a musical chunk, and our brain stores that chunk so that it's easier to recall at a later date. And then the next chunk is H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, and that's the next chunk. So as kids start to grow and as they get more language, they might not be saying the letters correctly, but they pick up on the musical phrase, and it really does help to retain that information by using singing and using songs, and then that's obviously helping from an educational point of view. They're learning the alphabet as well. So sing with your child, encourage them to sing, make up your own tunes, and just really watch their speech and language soar. Other benefit of singing is that it does release dopamine, which is the feel-good hormone, and as I said, oxytocin, and this also helps us reduce our stress levels and anxiety. So it's really a win-win for your child as well as us mums and dads. So give it a go. The next level developmental skill is looking at motor development, and this is broken into fine motor and gross motor. So fine motor is using the small muscles in our hands and our fingers to hold, to pick up, to write, and all that sort of thing. So some ways that you can use music to encourage fine motor skills and to practice fine motor skills is through counting and action songs, as well as instrumental play. So things like grasping onto little shakers, and I brought one here, shakers, so that's helping your child to grasp. I've got a little castanet here, and that's helping with pincer grasp, which is the grasp used to hold pencils and pens, and also a drum, so a drumstick and a drum, so that's helping your children grasp onto things, also working on fine motor with the big movements that they're doing as well. But counting songs are really good, things like Five Cheeky Monkeys, Dr. Knickerbocker, Five Little Ducks, any sort of instrument song that's going to get your child to move and grasp. And with younger children, so looking at bubs and things, do the actions for them, or do some hand-over-hand facilitation. For example, if you're doing counting, you can help them put their fingers down, or just count pressing on their fingers, providing some really gentle touch, and that's providing some sensory input as well. So there's lots of different ways that you can use fine motor movement to engage with your child, and using music to do that. Gross motor movement's more looking at your larger muscle groups. So things like dancing and using instruments, doing shaking, jumping up and down, moving to music, all those sorts of things. So it's helping your child practice large body movements as well as body awareness. And things like, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. You probably don't know the Wiggles, or you might know the Wiggles, but there's a song called the Bear Song. The Wiggles are a big Australian kids group. For younger bubs, as I said, providing hand-over-hand facilitation, or if you're doing something like row your boat, make sure you're providing some trunk support. So put your hands around bub's torso, you can sit them on your lap, do some rocking back and forth, side to side. That's all helping them build their trunk strength and all the muscles. You can do some gentle bouncing, all those sorts of things that you can do. If your child's old enough, you might just hold their hands and you might stand up and rock together or row together. Lots of different things that you can do from a gross motor point of view. Have a Friday night dance party, use music in the morning to energize you for the day. So many different ways that you can incorporate music and movement. Looking at cognitive development, so this is our ability to learn and to solve problems. Music can really help improve memory and cognition. You can use songs that teach various concepts or weave concepts into musical play. For example, if you're having to play with some like shakers or instruments, you might want to play up high or down low. You can practice stop and go, fast and slow, spinning round and round, learning different body parts, animal names and matching sounds, so something like Old MacDonald Had a Farm, the wheels on the bus, heads, shoulders, knees and toes, all those things that are incorporating different cognitive concepts. And again, that's also, for example, the head, shoulders, knees and toes is helping with body awareness too. So like I said, they sort of overlap at times, but yeah, there's so many things that you can include to provide some of that cognitive stimulation for your baby and for your child. And lastly, looking at social and emotional development. So this is our interaction with others, including how we help ourselves, our self-control, really providing opportunities for your child to turn take and to share. Notice their facial expressions when they're engaged in music. Are they smiling? Are they engaging in eye contact? Music is a great way to provide your child also with as a creative outlet for them to express themselves, and this can be done through singing, through dancing, through instrumental play, and all those things I've already shared with you. If your little one already attends some sort of early child music group, you may have already noticed and seen firsthand how they interact with others within the group. It's a great opportunity for sharing and turn taking, as we know there can be times where our children don't necessarily like to share. They're quite egocentric, so they want everything for themselves. So you might have already noticed some of those things when they're around other children or if they're in a music group setting. It's also a great opportunity to help strengthen your parent-child interactions and bonding as well, going to things like music groups, and just to see your child enjoying themselves and in a social context. I wanted to spend the last part of my time with you diving a little deeper into emotional development and specifically looking at things like sensory development and regulation, routines, or what I call daily rhythms, and meltdowns and tantrums. And these particular topics are what my online course is heavily focused on because, in my opinion, it is such a crucial area of our child's development now and has a huge impact on how they then form relationships with themselves and with others, how they cope with various situations and all those sorts of things as they move through childhood, teenage years and beyond, and particularly in the modern world we live in. We're so overstimulated at times with technology, and you might have already seen this within your own children, how that can impact their behaviour, and really it's looking at the brain. The behaviour is because of what's going on in the brain. So, I hope that's okay with you. And this particular area is also something, like I said, it can be challenging for parents to navigate through. It can be quite overwhelming and frustrating and anxiety-provoking at times. So I think it's really important to discuss it openly and to really give parents strategies on what they can use and empower them to feel the confidence in I don't like to use the word managing, but I'm going to use it in managing and navigating. That's probably a better word. And navigating through those more challenging times with their children and feeling like they've got the skills and the tools to be able to do so. And music's a really great way. Music-based strategies are a great way to do that from a more gentle approach. So looking at music and sensory development, engaging in music can create a multifaceted sensory experience, and as I mentioned, it lights up many areas of the brain at once. It's really important to provide children opportunities to explore their sensory environment. More obviously, music engages our auditory, our visual and tactile or touch systems, as well as our vestibular system. So this is responsible for balance and movement, and our proprioceptive system. So this is our ability to know where our body is in space. And engaging in musical play through some of the examples I've provided already will allow for your child to explore and develop their senses. It's also incredibly important to be aware of how your little lead processes sensory information, including music, and the potential impact this can have on a developing brain to become dysregulated and overstimulated. When we look at music and regulation, including meltdowns and tantrums, children's brains organise from the bottom up, so starting from the brainstem, which is sort of at this sort of back part, which is often referred to as our survival brain, and this develops earliest and then moves all the way up to the cortisol areas to our thinking brain. So when we're looking at our prefrontal cortex, so this is where all logic and reasoning and decision making and all that sort of thing comes into play. So during the toddler and early years, your child experiences all sorts of impulses, but they don't yet have control over them. And this is because that front part of our brain, which, as I said, the frontal lobe or our thinking brain, is still really in its infancy of development. This part of our brain doesn't actually fully develop to our early 20s, so it has a long way to go before it's completely developed. And it's responsible, as I said, for things like judgment, complex thinking, problem solving, impulse control, all those sorts of things that our young kiddos don't have control over just yet. As I said again, we've got so much stimulation in this information age, and this can potentially lead to meltdowns and tantrums because our children's brains just become overstimulated with the amount of sensory stimulation that they're getting. And as I said, that can be from visual, from screens, from sound, lots of different things that are going on in the environment. And not having as much opportunity as what probably 20 years ago, or even when I was a kid, to give the brain a rest, because we're in such a fast-paced go society these days. And this is why we commonly see behaviours such as tantrums and meltdowns, and see that our children don't have those skills to regulate, particularly around that toddler and early childhood age. And it really is impossible to reason and engage your little in any meaningful interaction when they're in that survival brain or survival mode and completely dysregulated. And it's just important also to think of what your auditory environment's like, or your sound environment's like at home, and potential ways that you might be able to turn things off or to limit different sounds in your environment, just to try and reduce overstimulation or the potential for overstimulation. Even things like lots of banging in the kitchen. If you can see your child starting to get a bit wound up, maybe just stop, take a break, do some really grounding activities together, and then get back to it. So how can music help? So the use of patterned, repetitive, rhythmical activities found in many music-based activities can be incredibly useful and effective to calm and regulate the survival brain. Whether your child has trouble winding down, they're anxious, they're easily overstimulated, or just overtired. Why rhythm? Why do we use rhythm? Well, simply put, rhythm is grounding. It's predictable, it's consistent, and it's really the foundation of life. When you think about how rhythm is involved in your life, from your heartbeat to your gait or how we walk, to time, to the seasons, sleep or circadian rhythms, for women, menstrual cycles, everything is founded on rhythm and predictability and cycles. So some activities that you can use to weave into your day to help with regulation are movement and dancing. You might choose a favourite song with a good beat to dance and move to. You can do short bursts throughout the day, and this will hugely impact your child's energy levels. It can be a great way to give your little one a brain break. You might sing an action song. If you're happy, clap your hands, stomp your feet. Stomping and jumping, really, really good, using the whole body. You might want to start with some of those bigger movements and then finish with something more gentle, like swaying or stretching. All those things that are going to just bring your child down, help them to ground, keep them calm. For what people with bubs or younger children, you can actually do the movements, as I said, on them, and that's providing some really beautiful sensory, tactile stimulation for them as well. Singing is also a really, really beneficial activity to do to help with regulation. So whether that's choosing a favourite song to sing or humming with your child, making up a tune, chanting, singing along to a familiar song that has a steady beat, singing out loud releases feel-good hormones and can help your child regulate. It also stimulates the vagus nerve, which is a long meandering bundle of motor and sensory fibres that links from the brainstem all down to the heart and to the lungs and the gut. And when we sing this, it actually initiates or acts like a vagal pump that sends out relaxing waves throughout our body. Singing at the top of your lungs works the muscles in the back of your throat, and this actually activates the vagus. And as I said, singing releases and increases oxytocin, which can help us feel more connected to others, and it's sort of the love hormone, if you will. Breathing, yes, we all breathe, but if your little one's old enough, have them practice some deep belly breaths. You might just want to get them to count in for 3 or 5 and do a big sigh. And a good metaphor to use for some of those more younger children is fill your belly up like a big balloon, or you might have them lie down and put their hands on their belly so they can feel it rise and fall. They might like to place a teddy or a favourite toy on their belly so that they have more of a visual cue and a prompt. They can actually see it going up and down, because otherwise when you're just saying visualize, children don't know what that means. So if you can have something that they can actually see, that link will be more there. So just doing some really nice slow calm breaths together, even if you're doing it and they're sitting there with you, they might join in, but just having those times where you're just doing some really calm, gentle breathing together. Finally, drumming. Drumming is amazing. It's rhythm, rhythm, rhythm all over. It regulates our brain and our nervous system. It calms that fight, flight, freeze response. And it's crazy to think that our responses to rhythm start off in utero from our mother's heartbeat. So get drumming with your little one. You might alternate banging hands together or, simultaneously. Play with your child or provide some hand-over-hand facilitation if they're too young to be able to do it themselves. If you don't have a drum, that's okay. We can be creative. We can use a tabletop. We can use tubs, saucepans. You don't have to have a drum. And I always say that to people. You don't have to have all these instruments. You can make them, or you can use what you've already got in your home. It's really important to weave these throughout your day, and you're going to get the best outcomes by doing this, and that's going to help to decrease the prevalence or severity of meltdowns and tantrums, and also help to teach your child the skills to self-regulate as they grow. And if your child is in the thick of a meltdown or tantrum, this is definitely not the time to try and reason with them or to implement any strategies. It can potentially cause more overstimulation. If they're having a meltdown and then you try and bring in a drum or something, they might hit it, but having that more sound and more, sensory input is likely going to create more overstimulation, so it's important just to let them ride through it. And then as they're starting to calm down, that's when you might just start to gently bring in some things. You might just want to sit with them. If you know that they like you humming and giving them a cuddle, once they're starting to calm down, you can do that with them. But the best way to help with regulation and to help with decreasing some of the prevalence of meltdowns and some of those behaviours and anxiety and all that sort of thing is to do little bits throughout the day and just make it part of your daily rhythm, which is what I'm about to talk about. So that was a really good segue. So daily rhythms, or as you may know, routines. Children crave predictability. And music provides this, as well as it being both stimulating and familiar for little brains. Music has the ability to cue your child's brain. It helps them self-regulate and teach them those skills and redirect their attention to engage in routines and transition through the day with a bit more ease. It's really important to create a daily rhythm in yours and your child's life. Not every day is going to be exactly the same. It's not about being rigid, but having a more structured day with patterns that your child can predict. They will feel a sense of comfort, familiarity, and a sense of calm, and it just helps the day to flow a lot easier. Weaving regulating music-based activities throughout your day, as I've mentioned, can be super helpful, and this can be something like moving with your little one in the morning to wake the body up. You might want to choose a quiet time song to sing or listen to something together before nap or rest time. You might do some drumming together. You might just do some gentle body tapping along to the beat of a song. So many different things that you can do. So think about one of the more challenging tasks that your child might be more resistant to following throughout your day. Is it packing away toys, or transitioning to brush their teeth of a night time or in the morning, getting dressed in the morning, coming to sit at the dinner table, you might eating their dinner, any of those sorts of things. Now think about how music could be implemented into those various times of the day to ease the stress and to provide a cue for your child. A specific example could be to use a brushing your teeth song. And it can be a simple substitution of lyrics to a familiar tune, like, "This is the way we brush our teeth, brush our teeth, brush our teeth," and something so simple like that. Or you might want to make up your own tune. And again, the key here is to be consistent, to use repetition. This creates familiarity, predictability, and cueing for your child and their little brains. So packing away song is another one that I've used over the years with my child. There's so many different ones that you can Google, but as I said, it can be really simple, and the simpler the better, because it is that sort of that repetition that's important. So in conclusion, that's the bulk of what I wanted to talk about today, and I know I've covered a lot here, and to be honest, it's really just scratching the surface and giving you just a broad overview of all the little different topics that I've spoken about within this presentation today. Each of these areas could quite literally be a presentation on their own, and actually most of the topics that I dive deep into in my online course, From Chaos to Harmony. If you have any questions, or if you would like any more information about my online course or other music therapy services I provide, I do face-to-face, which is probably not going to be helpful for anyone in North America, but I do also do online consultations over Zoom, one-on-one. Please reach out to me via my Facebook or Instagram pages, or you can use the link to schedule a call, a free connection call with me. Or as I said, set up a time. Whatever works for you, I'm always here to answer your questions and connect with people. I love to hear other people's stories as well. And I'll probably leave it at that for today. In terms of using music to help a child sleep or take naps, I can quickly chat about that if you'd like, Chris. Using music to help children with settling to sleep. So you can either use, I always recommend parents to try and use their voice, so it might be something like singing a song before bedtime. However, you can use recorded music, and music that I would recommend to use to help with settling or sleeping. There's a, I think you can get it on iTunes, it's called Music for Dreaming, and that's what we actually use at the hospital that I work at to help infants with settling and sleeping. So music, I guess some of the guidelines I recommend are to look at music that's, again, predictable, doesn't have lots of changes in it, play it at a soft speaking volume. It's really important to remember that even though most babies, typically developing babies, hearing is developed at birth, within that first 6 months of life, baby's hearing is still quite sensitive compared to adults. So something that might seem moderate soft to us can potentially be loud. So I always say, like, you be the judge, but also make sure it's at a soft speaking volume. Don't play music for more than about 10 to 15 minutes, and once your bub's asleep, turn it off. The reason for this is we want any sort of recorded music to act as a cue for sleeping or a cue for settling. If it's just played non-stop, continuously, it just becomes part of the background noise like anything else. If you have something on for long enough, think about when you put the radio or something on, you sort of zone it out after a while. Similar sort of scenario. So we want it to be used as a cue. So if you're using the same music, and again, I would recommend using the same thing, same song or same playlist or whatever it may be, as that is just going to create familiarity and that consistency, and make sure you are turning it off. If your bub wakes up, feel free to turn it on. I guess it just depends on different people's preferences. Some people don't like their babies to have sleep props. I used music with my son when he was young, but as I said, I always made sure I turned it off, and then used it again around sort of nap time or sleep time. There are definitely times where it was more challenging to get into sleep than others, so you know your baby the best, but they would be my recommendations, particularly for using recorded music. And I guess just something to be mindful of, depending on what sort of speakers you use. If you've got just little speakers that you can put at the head of your bub's bed, if they're sort of sleeping right down at the foot of the bed, always make sure it's at least 30 centimetres from their head, so it's not too close. But if you've got something that's a bit chunkier, a bit bigger, then I would definitely not be putting it in the cot. And again, it just depends on the age of your bub. If your bub's starting to move around in their cot and rolling around, then I don't recommend putting any sort of speakers or anything in the cot. But if they're in that sort of newborn phase, you can put it at the head of the bed, away from their head. And again, just be mindful of the volume of it as well. But using your voice is always going to be the number one thing. If your bub's really unsettled, swaddling, picking them up, you might just want to gently sway or pat them, and hum. Humming's always a good first option, and if they're sort of tolerating that, then you can maybe start singing the lyrics of a song. I hope that all makes sense, but yeah, you're just wanting to sort of strip away as much stimulation as possible and just gently start to introduce. So as I said, you might just sort of gently introduce the rocking first, and then just do some humming. Shushing is also a really good thing to do as well, because it's rhythmical, shh, 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 that sort of thing. So it's all just a bit of trial and error sometimes. Every bub's going to be different, but there's some things that you can give it a go using your voice and using recorded music. Hope that sort of answers all the questions, and thank you so much for the questions. It's really great to hear what others would like to know. And I'll leave it at that, and it's been great chatting with you all. Please reach out if you've got any questions, or if you wanted to talk more one-on-one, I am more than happy to. Just read through the links in the description of this video. Thanks everyone, see you later.